The flash of cameras lit up the opulent ballroom like lightning strikes as I watched Angelina Harrington stand frozen on the raised platform. Her fiancé, the polished heir to a rival fortune, smiled expectantly beside her while her powerful father announced the engagement that would supposedly save their crumbling family empire. But Angelina's face was pale, her hands shaking as she suddenly ripped the enormous diamond ring from her finger and threw it to the floor. "Stop this," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "Lennox is my wife. She's the only one I've ever truly married, and I won't pretend anymore." The room erupted in chaos, gasps and shouts colliding like waves against the marble walls. I stood there in the back, my heart slamming against my ribs, the weight of 4 years of hidden love crashing down in a single moment. Security moved in fast, but the damage was done. Angelina's mother, Eleanor Harrington, clutched her pearls, her face twisting into something between fury and disbelief. "Angelina, what have you done?" she hissed, loud enough for the microphones to catch. Guests pulled out phones, recording every second of the scandal that would dominate headlines by morning. I wanted to run to her, to pull her away from the storm she'd just unleashed, but my feet stayed rooted. This was the woman I'd loved in secret since our junior year at Columbia. The woman who'd whispered promises under city lights and held me through nights when doubt crept in. Now she was choosing me in front of everyone who mattered to her world, and the price was already starting to show in the way her father's jaw locked tight. My mind raced back to the beginning, to the rainy afternoon in the university library where it all started. I'd been buried in photography textbooks, scraping by on scholarships and part-time gigs, when Angelina slid into the seat across from me. "Mind if I share the light?" "My laptop died," she said with that easy smile that hid how much pressure she carried even then. She was the Harrington heir, destined for boardrooms and galas, but that day she was just a girl complaining about her father's endless expectations. We talked for hours, missing our next classes, and something clicked. By the end of the week we were stealing kisses in Central Park, promising to keep it quiet because her family would never understand. "They think love is a merger, not a feeling," she'd laugh, but her eyes always carried the shadow of what that meant. Now, for years later, that shadow had grown into a full-blown crisis. The Harrington empire was bleeding from a scandal no one spoke about in public. Her father's creative accounting that had nearly bankrupted the company. The only way out was this alliance with the Whitmore family, sealing it with Angelina's hand in marriage to their son Marcus. She told me about the ultimatum 2 weeks ago in our tiny Brooklyn apartment. The one we pretended was temporary. "It's just on paper, Lennox. I have to do this or everything my grandparents built disappears." Her voice had cracked then, and I'd held her while she cried, telling her we could figure it out. But deep down I knew the cost would be us. The ballroom security finally reached Angelina, guiding her off the stage as her father barked orders into his phone. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring the stares, my pulse thundering. When our eyes met across the chaos, hers were full of fire and fear. "Lennox," she whispered when I got close enough, grabbing my hand. "I couldn't let them make me lie anymore." Her fingers trembled in mine, and for the first time I saw the real toll, the way this decision had been tearing her apart inside while I'd been begging her to choose us. The night stretched ahead like a minefield, full of consequences neither of us had fully mapped. But in that moment, with the world watching, I knew we just crossed a line there was no coming back from. We barely made it out of the ballroom before the first reporters swarmed the lobby. Angelina kept her head high, her grip on my hand iron tight, but I could feel the tremor running through her. "Don't say anything," she murmured as flashbulbs popped. Her driver, an older man who'd been with the family for decades, whisked us into the black SUV waiting curbside. The door slammed shut, and the city lights blurred past as we sped toward her penthouse on the Upper East Side. The one place we'd rarely dared to go together. "They'll disown me," she said quietly, staring out the window. But I couldn't stand there and let them turn me into a lie. I squeezed her hand, my own mind spinning with the implications. This wasn't just a broken engagement. It was a public declaration that shattered every carefully constructed image the Harringtons had built. Angelina had grown up in boardrooms and charity galas, groomed to be the perfect successor. I'd seen the photos in society pages, the ones where she smiled beside politicians and CEOs. Our love had always been the part she hid in the shadows, Stolen weekends in upstate cabins or quiet dinners in Queens where no one knew her last name. What now? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Your mother looked like she wanted to kill me. Angelina turned to me, her green eyes fierce despite the exhaustion lining her face. Now we fight. I've spent years watching my father trade pieces of himself for power. I won't let him trade me. But even as she said it, I saw the crack in her resolve, the way her shoulders curved inward. The guilt was already there, eating at her the way it had in the weeks leading up to tonight. I'd pushed her to walk away from the arrangement, to choose us over the family legacy, but part of me had always known the price would include this exact kind of betrayal in her eyes. The SUV pulled into the private garage, and we rode the elevator in silence, the weight of what she'd done settling between us. Inside the penthouse, with its floor-to-ceiling views of the city, Angelina kicked off her heels and poured us both whiskey with shaking hands. Remember the first time I brought you here? She asked, a small smile breaking through. You were so nervous you'd knock something over. I laughed softly, the memory cutting through the tension. That night we danced in the living room to an old jazz record, pretending the world outside didn't exist. Now the world was crashing in. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages from friends who'd seen the clips online. Is this real? One read. Another from my sister. Call me. This is insane. I silenced it. Angelina's phone was already lighting up with calls from her father, her brother, the family lawyers. She stared at the screen but didn't answer. They'll say I was coerced or confused, she muttered. That you're just a phase. The words stung, even though I'd heard them in whispers before. Our relationship had survived 4 years of hiding, of me attending her events as the photographer friend, of her canceling plans when family obligations pulled her away. But this felt different, like the secrecy we'd clung to had finally turned into a weapon aimed at us both. We talked late into the night, replaying every argument from the past month. The day she'd told me about the embezzlement scandal, how her father had begged her to fix it with this marriage. The night I'd accused her of choosing money over me, storming out only to come back because I couldn't breathe without her. I was scared, she admitted now, curling against me on the couch. Scared of losing everything my family built. But losing you? That's not something I can survive. Her confession hung in the air, raw and honest, and for the first time since the party I let myself believe we might actually make it through. But morning brought the first wave of consequences. News alerts pinged. Harrington heiress rejects merger in shocking gay announcement. Social media was exploding with takes from both sides, some celebrating, others calling it a publicity stunt or worse. Angelina's mother left a voicemail that played on speaker. You have until noon to issue a retraction, or you're cut off. Everything. The trust, the shares, the name. Angelina listened without flinching, but I saw the way her jaw tightened. This was the world she'd been raised in. The one that demanded perfection and punished anything less. And I'd just become the reason it was falling apart. The retraction never came. By noon the lawyers arrived at the penthouse, delivering papers that stripped Angelina of her voting shares and froze her accounts. She signed where they pointed, her expression blank, but I knew the storm inside her was raging. It's done, she said after they left, sinking onto the leather sofa. I'm no longer a Harrington in anything but blood. The words carried a finality that chilled me. I'd always known her family was powerful, but watching her lose it piece by piece because of us felt like standing in the path of a train I couldn't stop. That afternoon we drove to my small apartment in Brooklyn, the one with the leaky faucet and second-hand furniture, the place that suddenly felt like home base in a world that had flipped upside down. My sister came over with takeout, hugging us both tightly. You two are crazy, but I'm proud, she said. Her support was a lifeline, but it couldn't erase the texts pouring in from Angelina's old circle. Some friends offered quiet solidarity. Others unfollowed and posted vague condemnations about betraying family values. The prejudice I'd feared for years was out in the open now, raw and vicious. Angelina paced the living room, phone in hand, arguing with her brother on speaker. You knew about Dad's mess for months and said nothing. This marriage was never about love, it was about covering his tracks. His response was cold. And now you've covered it with your little rebellion. Mom's in bed with a migraine. The board is calling an emergency meeting. The call ended with him hanging up, and Angelina dropped the phone like it burned. "They'll spin it as me having a breakdown," she said bitterly. "They always do when someone steps out of line." I pulled her into my arms, feeling the tension in her body. We knew this would happen. But we're together. That's what matters. She nodded against my shoulder, but the doubt lingered in her eyes. Later that night, after my sister left, the real confrontation came. "I keep thinking about what I gave up," she whispered in the dark. "Not the money but the company. The employees who counted on us. Was I selfish?" The question hung between us, heavy with the moral weight she'd been carrying alone. I'd pushed her to choose love, but now I saw the cost through her eyes. Generations of legacy reduced to tabloid fodder. The next days blurred into a haze of media stakeouts and whispered phone calls. A former college friend of Angelina's sold a story to a gossip site claiming we'd been corrupting her for years. The betrayal stung, especially when the article painted me as the outsider who'd lured the heiress away from her proper path. Angelina wanted to sue, but the lawyers advised against it. "It'll only drag this out," I told her. Instead, we focused on small things. Cooking dinner together, walking in the park at dawn to avoid cameras. In those moments I saw glimpses of the woman I'd fallen for. The one who laughed freely when no one was watching. But the pressure built. Angelina's father showed up unannounced one evening, his driver waiting downstairs. "This isn't you," he said, ignoring me completely. "Come home. Fix this before it's too late." Angelina stood her ground, voice steady. "It is me, Dad. Lennox is me." He left without another word, but the look he gave her was pure disappointment. That night she cried for the first time since the party, the kind of deep, wrenching sobs that came from years of swallowing who she really was. I held her, whispering that we'd rebuild, but inside I wondered if love could really outweigh the lifetime of expectations she'd just walked away from. The choices we'd made were tearing her apart, and I had to face the possibility that I might be the one who broke her. Weeks turned into a tense standoff. Angelina started freelancing as a consultant, using the skills her family had drilled into her, but every client seemed to come with questions about the scandal. I threw myself into my photography, booking shoots that paid the bills for our new reality in a modest two-bedroom we rented together. The move from her penthouse to this place had been symbolic, a fresh start, but it came with its own fractures. Arguments crept in at night, born from exhaustion and the constant scrutiny. "You're still checking the news," I said one evening after catching her scrolling on her laptop. "Let it go." She closed the screen too quickly. "It's my family, Lennox. I can't just pretend they don't exist." The words landed like a slap. I'd given up my own quiet life for this, for us, and now it felt like she was still tethered to the world that had tried to erase me. We fought then, voices rising in the small kitchen. "You chose this," I yelled. "You stood on that stage and chose me. Don't act like I'm the one pulling you away." She stormed out, slamming the door, and I sat on the floor wondering if our love was strong enough to survive the fallout we'd invited. She came back hours later, rain-soaked and apologetic. "I'm sorry. It's not you. It's the guilt." We talked until dawn, unpacking every layer. She confessed how her mother had called that morning, crying about how the family name was tainted. The emotional manipulation was relentless, designed to make Angelina question every decision. "They raised me to put the company first," she said. "Now I'm the villain in their story." I listened, holding her hand, realizing that the real battle wasn't with the press or the board. It was with the voice inside her head that still believed duty trumped everything. A bigger confrontation came when her brother leaked documents suggesting the engagement had been her idea all along. The story hit the papers, twisting our narrative into something ugly. Friends distanced themselves. My own mother called from Ohio, worried about my safety. "Are you sure she's worth it, honey?" The question echoed my own late-night doubts, but I pushed them down. Angelina and I faced the media together at a small press conference I helped organize, her hand in mine as she spoke calmly about love and authenticity. "I won't apologize for who I am," she said, and the conviction in her voice reminded me why I'd fallen for her. Yet the sacrifices mounted. Angelina lost a major consulting contract when the client cited reputational risk. We argued again, this time about money and the future. I can support us, I insisted. You don't have to carry everything. But pride ran deep in her, the same pride that had made her stand on that stage. In the quiet after, we made love with a tenderness that spoke of forgiveness, reaffirming the bond that had started it all. Still, the internal war raged on. Every time she saw a Harrington headline, I watched the light dim in her eyes. The betrayal from her own blood was carving pieces out of her, and I wondered how long she could keep choosing us before something inside her broke for good. The breaking point came 6 months later, when the family trust officially severed all ties. Angelina received the letter in the mail, a cold legal document that reduced her to nothing in their eyes. She read it at our kitchen table, then folded it neatly and set it aside. It's over, she said simply. But I knew it wasn't. The damage ran deeper than finances. It was in the way she stared at old family photos on her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. The moral dilemma had evolved into something darker, a constant weighing of what she'd destroyed versus what she'd gained. We tried therapy, sitting in a small office with a counselor who specialized in family estrangement and LGBTQ issues. You're grieving the family you thought you had, the therapist said. Angelina nodded, tears slipping free. I betrayed them by being honest. The words cut me because they echoed my own fears that I'd forced her hand. Afterward, walking home through the park, she stopped under the same tree where we'd shared our first real date. I don't regret it, Lennox. But sometimes I wonder if I could have found another way. The admission stung, yet it was honest, and honesty was what had started this whole mess. A surprise betrayal came from someone I never expected. My college roommate who'd known about us from the beginning. She sold an interview claiming Angelina had been pressured by me into the announcement. The story went viral, painting me as the manipulator and Angelina as the victim. The backlash was immediate. Hate messages flooded our inboxes. Angelina defended me publicly on social media, but the damage was done. We fought harder than ever that night. Why didn't you tell me she knew? She demanded. Because I trusted her. I shot back. The argument ended with both of us exhausted, clinging to each other in bed, realizing how fragile our circle had become. Through it all, small victories emerged. Angelina launched her own consulting firm focused on ethical business practices, turning her pain into purpose. Clients started coming, drawn to her story of courage. I landed a gallery show featuring photos from our hidden years together, images that told our truth without words. In the quiet moments between crises, we rebuilt. Weekend drives upstate, cooking experiments that ended in laughter, late-night talks about the future we wanted. A home, maybe kids someday, a life without hiding. The awakening was slow but real. Angelina started speaking at LGBTQ events, her voice growing stronger each time. I spent years afraid of who I was, she'd say. Now I'm free. But freedom had a price tag. The social isolation weighed on her more than she admitted. Old friends crossed the street to avoid us. Her mother's silence was the loudest blow. One evening, after another rejection from a potential client, Angelina broke down. Maybe they were right. Maybe I should have stayed quiet. I held her, refusing to let the doubt win. You chose truth. That's never wrong. The conversation stretched into the early hours, forcing us to confront the core question we'd avoided. Was love worth every loss? By morning her resolve had returned, but the scars remained. We'd survived the storm, but the cost was etched into both of us. A permanent reminder of the choices that had redefined everything. A year after the announcement, we stood on the balcony of our new apartment overlooking the Brooklyn Bridge, the city humming below like it had never known our names. Angelina's firm was thriving, small but steady, built on principles she'd once been forced to ignore. My photography career had taken off too, the gallery show leading to commissions that paid more than I'd ever dreamed. The media storm had quieted to occasional mentions, but the family silence lingered like an open wound. Angelina had tried one last time to reach her mother, only to be told the Harrington name no longer included her. The rejection still brought tears on bad nights, but they came less often now. We'd both changed. I was stronger, no longer the girl waiting in the shadows. Angelina had found a voice she never knew she possessed, advocating for others trapped between love and legacy. Our relationship had deepened through the fire, tested by every confrontation and sacrifice. There were still arguments, still moments when the what-ifs crept in, but they ended in understanding rather than doubt. "I chose you every single day," she told me one morning over coffee, and I believed her. Looking back at the party that changed everything, I saw the courage it took for her to stand there and speak her truth. The family pressure, the societal prejudice, the moral tightrope she'd walked, it had all led to this quieter, truer life. Friends we made in the community reminded us daily that we weren't alone. Yet the internal conflicts never fully vanished. Angelina still woke sometimes with guilt heavy on her chest, whispering about the empire she could have saved. I held her through those nights, reminding her that empires built on lies weren't worth preserving. As the sun set over the river, painting the sky in golds and pinks, Angelina turned to me with that same fierce love that had started it all. "We made it," she said softly. The words carried the weight of every decision, every tear, every stand. We'd paid the price in full. Lost inheritance, fractured family ties, public scrutiny that still followed us in quiet ways. But we'd gained something irreplaceable, a partnership forged in honesty and fire. The journey had been brutal, full of betrayals from those we trusted and awakenings we never expected, but it had taught us the true cost of living authentically. Standing there with her hand in mine, I couldn't help but wonder, was Angelina right to destroy her family's legacy for our love, or should she have sacrificed her happiness for those who raised her?